It's easy when you know how, isn't it?
Of course. I mean, we do this all the time, so it becomes a habit. So
It
you
does, and we've actually registered now because we get, we I think, even when we're coming out of lockdown, I think this is something that we're going to use quite a lot, and it's much better as well if you want to get in touch with people that are overseas.
exactly, and the audio quality is a lot better than a phone call.
Oh yeah, absolutely, better than WhatsApp.
Oh, definitely.
Because yeah, we started out this thing.
And
That
a
is it.
very good morning in Cantonese to you too.
But you know what? Now, this is something I was saying to Yasmin. I don't know about, I'm sure so many people did as well. I saw this coming from the day that Facebook bought WhatsApp
And Instagram and a couple of
and
other
Insta.
companies, and
And
associated themselves with Cambridge Analytica back in 2018. And you know how that ended up on January 6th.
with the thing is, they become a company you can't trust. And I think the thing with this, and I don't know if you agree with me, if they had just come in and said, uh, "We've updated our privacy policies," and that was it, probably a lot of people, me included, just click on it without reading them, which I guess is a dumb thing to do, but a lot of people do it. But never ever threaten people. I mean, the first thing, if you say, if you don't agree to our policy update by the 8th of February, what it is, you're going to have to leave the app. Okay, well,
Hmm.
I'm not going to wait till the 8th of February. I'll leave now.
Exactly.
And like 72 hours, 25 million people moved to Telegram.
That is correct, but that's 25 million out of, I don't know,
Oh, so
two
many
and a
billion.
half billion people use the
But
app
if
every
they all
day.
gave me a dollar, if they all gave me a dollar, I'd be very happy.
Oh, if they all gave me a penny, I'd be happy.
Why is it, you know, what is it with this? Because we know we can't trust Zuckerberg. He's proved this because of, like you said, what they do with Cambridge Analytica. What on earth makes him think that people are going to agree to give him more information from what is supposed to be a personal apping system, a personal messaging system?
Well, I think it's all a matter of economics. I mean, you've worked with, something that's crucial to the economy, which is, for example, petroleum products and whatever. And you know that a lot of the times, whoever decides the price will say, well, if we raise the price by this much, we're going to lose this much customers, but we're going to make this much more money, and that becomes a economic decision. And in this sense, Facebook was already sitting on a lot of data from
Mm.
people who opted in when it was optional to have this data associated, and from associating that data with the one from Instagram and the one from Facebook and the one from all of Facebook's partners and the one that we are providing. For example, whenever we update our website so that when we share something on Facebook, it shows with like the little picture and the description of the article and so on. We have to put in Facebook's code on our website so that every time somebody visits our website, Facebook can tell that that person visited the website.
Mm.
And if you're relating that with Facebook's information, well, people will say Facebook can come to conclusions such as people who listen to this show also like or dislike certain things on the internet and so on, so they can sell them more targeted advertising, which is kind of what pays for the whole thing. So Facebook probably said, well, what can we do to make our data worth more? Well, we can associate it even more. And it's in these connections of little bits of data here and there that here is where the value lies. Facebook doesn't care that, for example, you and I would message each other about, I don't know, a football game or something like that. They just care to know that every time there's a football game, we talk, and it doesn't matter what we talk, we're just into football. Or we hate football with the same passion or whatever. And that is worth something, sometimes even more than whatever it is we talked about. So that's what Facebook's doing. That people are thinking wrongly that Facebook is going to look at all your pictures and look at all your texts and so on. But there isn't enough computing power in the world to do that because you'd have to have half the computers in the world listening to the other half of the computers in the world. And again, there's more information in what goes on around these conversations than the conversations themselves. I'll give you another example. There's a security guard in your building that has access to look at all the cameras of people going in and out. He can't listen to the conversations they're having, up and down the elevator, but he knows when everybody comes in and out, who talks to who rolls their eyes every time Gerry walks out the elevator, for example. So in knowing the comings and goings, that security guard has a much better idea of what's going on in the building than if he actually listened to or even read the transcripts of the conversations that go on in the elevator. So that's the thing. A lot of people are saying,
But that same security guard, for instance, if I get somebody dropping something off to me at the building for me, and he sees who it is that dropped it off, then he's got additional information. Which
exactly,
so
even if he
no,
didn't look at the contents of the box.
no, exactly. But so what I'm saying here is, look, okay, I know they say, we can't look at your information if we want to. It is encrypted. If something doesn't go, it stays on our servers for so long. Or I don't think that is the issue here. I think I know that they don't. But if I go to Telegram, well, Telegram may not be a particularly brilliant example because it is Russian. But the thing is, they're only going to see the information from my whatever I do on Telegram.
Well, Telegram itself is interesting. First of all, it is made by a couple of Russian people, but they have fallen out of favor with the Russian government because they haven't been very cooperative with the Russian government. So you just reminded me of that line from, I think it was one of the Austin Powers movie. I hate people who discriminate others based on their point of origin, and the Dutch. That was the most terrible Michael Caine impression I've ever done.
You're
So
right.
yeah, the thing is, I think I do better with the one with the bloody doors off.
Not a lot of people know that.
Exactly. So the thing is, they are Russian. Yes, they were born in Russia, but they are not necessarily in line with the Russian government. That being said, the author of Telegram has opened the source code for the Telegram program, but he hasn't opened up the source code for the server side. He asks us to trust him with that, and a lot of us are comfortable with that, but I understand why somebody might not want to trust something that they can't audit. The reason he's given is that he doesn't want governments like the Russian government or others to have a look at the source code of his servers so that they could build either their own servers or to impersonate his or to make their own social network or whatever, or for others to maybe look for exploits or whatever. But that kind of falls apart because you have other applications such as Signal, for example, that open up the entirety, the 100% of their source code is open, including parts of it like the encryption, which is used by WhatsApp or by other applications that have implemented Signal's protocols. So Signal is based on the concept that the best safe deposit box in the world is one that is so transparent that you can look at the mechanism and still conclude, I can't break into it. And I think that's the best approach. I understand that Telegram will keep a list of your contacts. I understand that Signal, in order to allow you to have notices such as, Gerry just joined Signal and things like that, what they've done is they come up with a protocol that encrypts that information so that it doesn't have to be stored in their servers. Your own application keeps a list of who's on or off in your contacts, and it doesn't share that information with Signal, which I think is a good thing. A lot of people are worried because they think, well, how does Signal tell me that Gerry just joined Signal? But there is a protocol, and it's documented, that allows the Signal servers to provide you with a zero knowledge proof that somebody else is on Signal or not. So that's something off their minds. But definitely, a lot of people are going to Telegram, not only because they think it's more secure, which it isn't, it's just as secure, but also because it's got a bunch of other functionalities like up to 100,000 people in groups, or like stickers and bots. Bots are just little snippets of programming that you can make so that it'll auto reply or have menus or tie it up with your customer management system or whatever. It's very, very functional. Signal lacks that. It's much more of a bare bones application,
Mhm.
just to send and receive information. Also, Telegram lets you send files up to 1.5 gigabytes in size to another user, which is interesting. I think the limit right now in Telegram is like 54 megabytes or something like that. But one thing you have to take into account is that Telegram says all our messages are encrypted, and that is true. But unless you set a conversation to secret chat or secret mode or whatever, it does go through Telegram's servers unencrypted and then gets encrypted on the way to the other person's device. So it's encrypted, but it's only end-to-end encrypted if you
Mhm.
actually
Mhm.
request it to. And also, the groups are encrypted, yes, but in order for a message to be shared among a number of people, it does have to be decrypted at Telegram side or at WhatsApp side or at any other point so that it can then be sent encrypted to everybody else. So everything you chat in a group chat, technically, while it is encrypted, it is available for the servers to look at. And you know that there are some legislations around the world. The first one that comes to mind is China's, that if something is sent or received on a server that's within a certain jurisdiction, then some governments have the legal ability to seize that information, and that might not be comfortable for some. So be sure to take that into consideration when you're using any of these apps.
I tell you what, another thing which is interesting is that WhatsApp's new policy cannot be enforced in the European Union.
Because they have a really
They
good
have really
general
tight.
data protection
Hmm.
regulation.
Hmm.
It's a law with teeth, claws, fangs, and a poison tongue. I mean, it's really really powerful. And since they have so many millions and millions of users at in the European Union, they dare not lose access to those people. So they
But it's
are.
all right then to do it to everybody else because we don't have the legislation.
Exactly. The one we have here is more like a stuffed plush toy of a tiger. It does have some protections for users, but it only comes into play, I think, at the end of March. And even then, if you already gave, Facebook and every other social media network the ability to gather all of this information and work with it as they see fit, then there's not much legal recourse. So I think it's going to be a question of how much users are willing to push back. You have to take into account that a lot of cell phone plans, not only Panama but across the world,
Mm.
are like, okay, it's all you can eat plus what's free WhatsApp data or whatever, or you can just not browse the web but you can use WhatsApp or things like that. And there are no such plans for other applications. So a lot of people who depend on WhatsApp right now are going to still depend on WhatsApp, especially because here in Panama and a lot of other places in the world, SMS messages are charged for.
Hmm.
One of the big reasons why people in the U.S. don't use WhatsApp that much is because they have free SMS wherever they go. So they use either iMessage on the iPhone or they use the regular messaging application
Hmm.
that comes with your Android phone, and it doesn't cost them a dime. They can't send big files, they can't have groups
Hmm.
or whatever, but for basic private communications between people, it kind of does the job. So it doesn't affect the U.S. market that much. It's going
How
to be
do
a mhm.
so? I was going to say, how does the likes of Telegram then and Signal, if they don't have this, if you like, a conglomerate that Zuckerberg has, how do they make their money?
They don't. They're NGOs. They're nonprofit organizations that receive donations from people and are audited just like any other NGO. And you can see who funds them and where they get their money from and so on. A lot of people won't bother to check who funds Signal or who funds
Hmm.
Telegram or whatever. But those people who do, and we kind of outsource our trust to them, these big auditing firms or whatever, they are in charge of making sure these donations are used in an ethical manner and so on, and that's how we deposit our trust in them. That being said, if for whatever reason you need something that isn't controlled by a third party, you can always use a lot of your own applications and services and servers and so on. I, for one, remember a couple of years ago, I had a customer who wanted to set up his own internal private communications server for his company. It was a small company, 10, 15 people, but they
Mm,
wanted secure communications because they just did. And what we did was we set up a server in the EU, which has much more protective legislation. And we set up encrypted communications apps that are open source and based on things like Signal. And we also implemented a VPN on each one of the devices. And we took away the SIM card on the cell phones that they used to communicate with. They would communicate using Wi Fi, but through a VPN. And without a SIM card on the phone, there's no way for a third party to try to inject your phone, like we've heard with systems like Pegasus and so on, that rely on vulnerabilities found in these standard cell phones by sending you a text message that looks like gibberish, but it's actually computer code that, by the cell phone misinterpreting it, gives access to a third party to control your phone or whatever. So, kind of in that bubble, they were perfectly secure in that situation as long as their phone didn't fall into the wrong hands. And if it did, the phones themselves were encrypted and had like long PIN codes and things like that. So if you take all of that effort, you're going to see, well, that cost them, at least four figures,
mm.
and it was worth it for them. But John Q. Public can't afford four figures to install servers and VPNs and all of that. They have to rely on third parties to do that, and the cost of that is your information.
Mm. Do you think that the likes of well, Facebook in particular, really, I guess, Google could perhaps be another one, should have there should be a separation between the types of business that they have. In other words, should they be broken up?
It's a tough question. I think that breaking them up is a difficult choice, and I understand the points that lead to wanting them to break up. But at the same time, I also believe in free enterprise. The thing is, there has to be a balance somewhere, and there has to be a line somewhere, and they've obviously crossed that a long time ago. What we also need to do is to have legislation in place that prevents this sort of thing from happening in the
Mm.
future. I mean, right now we're worried about Facebook, but what about Amazon? What about Google?
Oh,
What
sure. I
about
mean, if not,
Microsoft?
if not, they're even worse. I mean, Amazon, for instance, they have something that can listen to you in virtually every room in your house.
Yeah, and it's not from a lack of technology to do it any other way. The thing is, for example, that device that we have at home listening to us and helping us turn our lights on and off and things like that. It could be done with local artificial intelligence, but
Mm.
instead of costing $29.99, it would cost probably 10 times that because it would have to have its own internal computer, its own internal dictionary, learning engine, and so on. Which is not to say that it doesn't exist. It's already being created by enterprising individuals that believe in higher levels of privacy, who have developed such things using low cost computers like we've talked about in the past,
Mm.
like
Mm.
the Raspberry Pi and things like that. But it will take a long time for these devices to actually hit the market because they don't have the clout that Amazon has, for example, or
Mm.
Google or Apple's with her Siri device. So it's going to be a matter of, I think, the general public being more aware of what's going on, trying to be a little bit more careful about what they accept by doing things like reading terms and conditions before they hit agree. I know that a
Mm.
lot of them are, three paragraph shorts of the Talmud's length, but we need to be more careful and be more aware of our security.
Or even if, Alex, there was a enforcement that if you change your policies in any way, if you don't, just giving you the whole thing and then leaving you to find what they changed doesn't work, but making them say you have to quote the items that have been changed. That's one thing. Because I must admit, I don't bother. I don't read them. And that's down to me. That's my fault. One of the things, I mean, I think with these devices in your home, I mean, they can be very, very intrusive. Uh,
Yes.
because also now, I mean, it's not just, for instance, Amazon also bought, of course, Ring, so they now also have access to everybody's door cameras, security cameras indoors. Can they be trusted?
I think they can, but not because they're doing it for the right reasons. I think they can be trusted because right now it's just too expensive to monitor everybody and try to make a profit out of it. Once they figure out how to do that, they might change the terms and conditions again. For example, Amazon, right now with the Ring Cam and everything, they did, and I remember we talked about this some time ago, have a program where if you wanted to, you could unlock the door for the Amazon delivery person to have the delivery person drop off the packages inside your home and then lock the door behind them, which, you know, on its own,
What a great idea.
exactly, it sounds good because it prevents package thieves from, getting your stuff, and that's a big problem in other places in the world, especially in the U.S. I mean, they drop off the packages right next to your door, and people just expect nobody to pick them up and steal them, but they actually do. Uh,
Mm, mm.
so, at first glance, it sounds like something very useful, but you're giving access to a third party to enter your home, and that's something that a lot of people would understandably not be comfortable with. So we need to start to not only be aware of what's going on with these companies that manage a lot of our data, but we need to actively, as users, start pushing back a little and saying, you know what, I'm not going to do this, and you're going to have to work in a way that doesn't require me to do this, because otherwise I'm not going to do business with you. And unless and until the general public starts pushing back in a way that affects the bottom line of these companies, they're just going to take little by little steps to erode that privacy. And it's going to be difficult to walk back from that in a meaningful way. So I think we should start being more aware of this and start reading all of this stuff. And if you agree, fine. I understand your reasons to do that. I have some of those reasons myself. Why I'm going to maybe continue using WhatsApp, at least for the foreseeable future. But we need to make some sort of a stand and explain to these companies that they need to work on ways not only to do so much more to improve our lives, but to do so in a way that does preserve our right to privacy and to be left alone if we want to.
But this isn't new, because even if we go back to the days of snail mail, there was always the risk of somebody steaming open your envelope and reading what's in it.
Exactly, and even before that. So I think, and that's a one thing that we need to take into account. We also need to work as users under the assumption that some of our data may be out there without our consent. For example, you've probably received a couple of these emails by, there's this nefarious person here in Panama that sells data, and they brazenly advertise saying, we've got the Social Security database, we've got the Panama Canal employees database, we have the
Mm.
government database. I don't know if that is a fact or not, or if they are just selling junk information. But if they are not selling junk information, if this is actually, in fact, that information and these databases are current, then we've got a problem. I mean, I was talking to one of the former directors of the Panama's Authority of Innovation and things like that. He just recently filed his papers for his retirement, and it didn't. It wasn't more than 3 days after that he started getting 3, 4, 5 calls a day from banks offering him loans, which he doesn't really need because he he is pretty well off, and
Mm.
he doesn't need loans or anything like that. But still, that raw information was being copied to somewhere else and given away to banks. And banks need to stop using information that was obtained in irregular, through irregular channels. And they need to be held accountable for that.
So,
If they can't do business by following the law, how can we trust them with our money?
oh, don't get me on banks. It's another complete program. I mean, the thing is, you know, it's a one way thing with the banks right now. They're purging everybody because you've got to give them your updated information, the same information you gave them last year. But what they did in one case, this was Banesco, is they came to us and said, "Well, I sent a check for deposit. They wouldn't. No, we're not going to accept it until you've given those forms to us." Now that's almost as bad as WhatsApp saying, we're going to take you offline by the 4th of February if you don't agree. There is absolutely no customer care or courtesy from banks these days.
I think
Do
it's
it,
actually
do
worse
it
than
or else.
WhatsApp. Because,
Well,
if
well,
you don't use WhatsApp, you can just tell WhatsApp, give me back my money, give me back what I paid for you. You didn't really pay much, so it's
hmm,
free. So, but this is Banesco keeping your money.
was stopping me putting money in the bank, and I mean,
Exactly.
and that so therefore that affects the cash flow. But no, I mean you're absolutely right because you've got to use a bank. I mean,
Mm.
this is it is a monopoly. It's a cartel. I remember as a kid, I'm going back a long time. Obviously, we used to put money in the bank to save it. You got something like 16% a year interest on it. Now they don't give you anything. Why? Well, because the money, of course, is going to the shareholders. They get their money, but the people that put their money in the bank don't.
Yeah, and it used to be that you could make some decent interest in the bank, like you mentioned. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my first savings account paid 6% interest. Now, the interest that you get on a savings account is less than the amount you lose for inflation's sake, which
Mm,
is ironic. I mean,
mm.
I'm actually right now depositing money in the bank is the I would say the slowest way to lose money in the process. It's like it's insane. But unfortunately, that's the reality we live in, and it will be until we, as the general public, start demanding more and asking more of not only banks but social media and everybody else.
But
And the way we act with on that is by doing things like saying, you know what, I say no, I don't agree, and thank you, and I'll just use something else.
mm. I tell you what, I just want to get back to because this actually happened last week. Funnily enough, after all this business with WhatsApp and sort of discussions on privacy, is that so just after Christmas, I wanted to buy myself a very very good hand drill and hammer drill, and of course, I guess the cousinar of that side of things is DeWalt. So I went out and I bought myself a nice DeWalt um, drill with two batteries and whatever. And there was something, I went back to look for something else. Then I got a message from Amazon, new batteries for DeWalt. I mean, it must have been a coincidence, but why? You know,
It may have been that you were browsing the DeWalt website at some point to find what the brand was or things like that, and what the brand was offering. So you went to the local store, and then your Facebook was installed on the phone or whatever. So they figured out, okay, he's in a hardware store, and he's been looking for DeWalt stuff. Let's offer him some DeWalt advertising or whatever. And that's kind of what makes Facebook all of its money.
no, I tell you what, I do like this thing, Amazon. You buy something off Amazon,
Hmm.
and then the next week they send you, got just the thing for you, and it's the thing you bought the week before.
Yeah, it's smart, but not that smart. If it were smarter, it would probably, sell you something like, okay, so you bought a drill last week. Here's something to hold the drill with, or here's some extra batteries
Mm-hmm,
for the
mm.
drill, or you bought the drill, now get the automatic something or other. But yeah, sometimes you get the same thing advertised. I mean, I've looked for things for customers sometimes, and a customer will ask me something like, "Hey, how much does a server cost?" Well, there's this one that costs around $600. It's pretty good, even for something as cheap as that, and so on. And for the next 3 or 4 weeks, every time I go to a website that has embedded Amazon ads, I'll see ads for the same thing. So that's why sometimes when people ask me for things that are not necessarily something that I myself would shop for, I use an incognito window. So that way, at least that search doesn't get tied to my profile, and I don't get advertising for, I don't know, things like adult diapers or things like that. I know I might need them eventually, but fortunately,
Yeah, but
knock on wood, I don't
they're,
need them
they're
right now.
looking ahead, Alex. I mean, that's the whole idea of the business. And by the way, I wanted to mention your background looks very good because it makes you look as if you've got a halo.
Yeah, the one with the horns wasn't working.
Now, just quickly to wrap things up, people that are listening to us, people have seen all the publicity in the press and all the talk about WhatsApp. I mean, I left basically out of a matter of principle, not concern about because to be perfectly honest, if you want to look at my WhatsApp, even if you want to look at my encrypted WhatsApp messages or whatever, I'm sure they would put a normal person to sleep in about 5 minutes. So that's not my concern. My concern was the attitude they took on this case, which was these are our terms and conditions. We've updated them. Take it or leave it. In other words, if you don't like it, well, you can either agree to it or leave the platform. That I do not agree with. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I've always had Telegram on there, although it's not been active because the people that all the contacts that had it there weren't using it because they were still using WhatsApp. But what I have said to everybody now, with effect from the 31st of January, I will not be communicating with WhatsApp. I will have this sort of changeover period. I may keep it and not use it just in case somebody comes up. I will be using Telegram, and I've also got Signal on my computer, so I got plenty of options. But the normal guy, I guess, like me or whatever, should they be concerned of agreeing to
I
WhatsApp?
think they should be concerned out of principle like you. Because let's play something between devil's advocate and straw man here. Have you ever been asked to leave a restaurant because of a dress code?
No, because I always dress nicely.
Exactly. But somebody might walk in and say, "Hey, I don't care for your no shirt, no shoes, no service rules. I want to be attended to, even if I'm not wearing shirt, shoes, or pants or whatever." And you have to take into account that Facebook is a private business, and you should allow private business to conduct business in the way that they see fit. And I agree with that in
Hmm.
principle.
Hmm.
But this is not a restaurant. This is not, a beauty parlor. This is not like your regular, business. In a restaurant, you can always eat elsewhere. You can make your own food at home, et cetera, at a reasonable cost. But there is no reasonable cost for you to create a network of secure messaging and file sending and receiving on your own. So there is kind of a big barrier for you to be able to say no. So it is kind of a monopoly situation, and there are laws in place to protect uh, the public from abusive business practices. So I believe the answer lies somewhere in the middle. A business can be successful without being abusive, and Facebook should consider trying to be successful in a way that doesn't infringe on the rights of people to be private. So I understand that you're leaving Facebook and WhatsApp and everything like that, and I would encourage people to do that as much as they can, because that would send a strong message. I myself, like you, I mean, if you could read my private messages, you'd either fall asleep or cringe. But the thing is, I use it a lot for a lot of things besides gossiping or whatever, or sending
Business
memes.
and customer information.
Exactly. A lot of people invested a lot of money in automating WhatsApp. There's a lot of businesses right now where you can shop by WhatsApp. You can get customer services by WhatsApp and so on, and that should be worth something. And I think that by people leaving in droves, they can send a message to WhatsApp and say, we need you to do business, but you got to work better.
All right, Alex, as always, thank you very much. We can communicate together with Signal or Telegram or smoke signals. We go back
A
to that.
Hogwarts owl.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Be expecting an envelope soon.
As always, Alex, thanks so very much for being with us here on The Breakfast Show and sharing your knowledge with us about techie things. And we'll be back with you again next week, all being well.
See you next week.
And it's nice to see you, I must admit.
Nice to see you too.
All right, Alex, take care.
You
Dr.
too.
Computer, Alex Newman here with us on this morning's Breakfast Show. The time